Hello, hello. We are here in the basement yet again talking about farming with native beneficial insects. This is a guide released by the Xerces Society that is geared towards, farming and farmers. Talks a lot about IPM, integrated pest management, and how these things can help reduce your the cost of your pesticides and all sorts of fun stuff like that. So, the Xerces Society is not something I have a lot of familiarity with. The only time I've really run into them is through the seed mixes available from Prairie Moon Nursery here in Minnesota. Um, the Prairie Moon sells Pollinator Palooza, Insectapalooza, and some other um, seed mixes that are designed to help support and attract a variety of beneficial insects. So, actually, we put down some of, I can't remember if it was Insect Palooza or Pollinator Palooza this year. We may go ahead and do some of the other at some point in the next couple of years. But I saw this book. I don't remember if it was recommended on Amazon or eBay, something like that, and figured I would give it a shot. Now I knew going in that this was definitely directed towards large scale farming things. So there is a lot in here that's not necessarily for somebody with a third acre. They do have information on scaling things down a little bit, some notes in the margins and things like that, on how gardeners can use this information. And honestly, it was, if nothing else, fascinating to learn a little bit about the options that farmers have, and some of the things that have been tested in recent years. And so that was definitely good. I was happy to learn about beetle banks, which are something that started, I think it said, sometime in the 1990s in the UK, where they're planting these berms covered in clump grasses. Like here, we would use prairie drop seed or little blue stem or things like that. And predatory beetles overwinter in those, and it provides them a good safe home and then gets them back into your local ecosystem faster. Because if you just have your annual crops and then you plow them under, the beetles don't have a home. And so something they've started in the UK, and I guess I think it said Washington State University, if I recall correctly, is sort of the spearhead of that here in the U.S. So definitely something cool. So there's a lot of information in here for farmers, and even if there's nothing directly in here to boil everything down to a gardener, um, there's a lot of information in here that a gardener can use, especially if you don't already have a really good, sturdy foundation of knowing about the beneficial insects and the native plants that they use. I know a little, not very much, and most of what I know, it's just from reading about the plants on seed selling and plant selling websites. So I learned a fair bit here, and was happy to have the information. I particularly liked. Well, first off, I would like to see a much bigger push towards organic and at least the IPM. If you don't know what IPM is, the integrated pest management, it seems to be this push to use the minimum pesticides and herbicides necessary. I think particularly pesticides. And there's a lot about paying attention to what pests you have, doing a little bit of math to find out what the threshold for needing to put poisons down is and what the minimum amount of poison you really need to use is to keep those things at bay. So it's something I'd like to see as a bigger push in the U.S., but I'd honestly prefer better structure for organic growing. Not sure where I was going with that, but this section here. The book does not aim to make people feel bad about using pesticides, nor does it make an effort to seem superior for supporting the movement towards IPM and organic, which can be useful. Sometimes when things get preachy, there are people who don't want to listen, and this book isn't necessarily going to turn those kinds of people off. So while I am happy to have somebody wax eloquent about the benefits of organics, I'm glad to see something that's palatable by people who aren't interested in that. Some of the other things I really liked are these two sections in the back. One that is dedicated to photos and some brief details about specific insects. Now, these aren't like super detailed things about the insects, but it's enough information that you should be able to at least do a surface identification of some of the beneficial insects in your yard or on your farm, and know when things are helpful. And that in itself is helpful. I don't know much about individual insects, and this is making me kind of interested in seeing if I can get my hands on some sort of photographic encyclopedia of the insects of Minnesota. So that's something I'm going to have to do a little research into, maybe contact our local University of Minnesota Extension if there's nothing readily available, and see what they suggest. But I think it might be nice. And on top of the insect thing, there is a section talking about details with photos of native and then a few non-native beneficial plants for the beneficial insects, to provide them habitat or to provide alternate prey and alternate food sources so that the beneficial insects will stay in your area. So yeah, this was a pretty good book. I think if you are an exceptionally, I shouldn't even use the term exceptionally, if you're a really experienced native gardener, or if you feel pretty confident that you know the insects in your area, then this book is probably something you won't need. If you are just starting out, up until at least whatever skill level I have, which I wouldn't proclaim to be very high, or knowledge level at least, this book is still helpful. There were things in here where it was basically just reinforcing. It was another source saying, this is how this is, and I appreciate that, because the more sources I'm getting information from, the more confident I feel I'm doing the right things. I appreciated the reading that rock piles can be good for beneficial insects, particularly spiders and beetles, I believe, because we have a rock pile in our yard, and I now get to pretend that I did that for the beneficial insects. And I know not to, silly, I used to wash the cobwebs off of it with the hose, and I'll avoid doing that as much as I feel kind of icky about spiders because I'm a child. And also it somewhat reinforced my love of heirloom plants with an offhanded, I think, note in the margins about heirloom plants tending to be better sources of nectar and pollen, since apparently some of the more modern ones have been overbred to the point where they're starting to lose some of that. And that's not the first time that's something I've heard. It's just the first time it's coming from any sort of educated source on the subject. So I felt vindicated in my love of heirloom roses in particular. So yeah, farming with native beneficial insects might be a good book for you. And moving into the future, I have started reading this. Now, some of you will recognize the name Ruth Stout. She is the namesake of one of the no-dig garden styles. And since she was the first one I heard of, I kind of associated the term Ruth Stout method with just a general no-dig, everything no-dig is Ruth Stout. I've since learned that it's a bit more complex than that, we'll say. There's a whole bunch of word game at play here, but I was really excited to get my hands on a copy of this book. As I understand, it was her first book, or at least her first book published. It's written when she had about 25 years of experience in her garden. I think that would make her about 68, 69, somewhere in that area. And I'm just a tiny bit in, and I already absolutely love it. Not just as a gardening book, but as a sort of document of American life way back when. But that is all nonsense to be talked about in our next video, which, who knows, maybe I'll make it tomorrow, because I haven't had to work the past 2 days, so I have been doing nothing but reading and making dinner. Yeah, I guess that's about it for this rambling bit of nonsense. You guys stay healthy, stay safe, and get ready for spring, right? Alrighty. See you soon. Thanks for watching.